I found out that my wife Linda had been cheating on me for 12 years. It was a real shock to me. I wanted to figure out the reasons why she did that. After all, I thought we had a happy marriage. I'm truly sorry, Mr. Walker. I hate delivering bad news to people like you, John Michaels said, as he handed me the envelope containing a detailed report on my wife's interactions with her former boss, Grant Jacobs. Inside were several photos and a DVD as well. I had already seen the photos, but I hadn't watched the DVD yet. Part of me didn't want to, but I knew I'd have to face it to fully understand what John had uncovered. Do you have any idea how long this has been going on? I asked. John glanced at his initial report before responding. Based on the transcripts, it's been going on for at least 10 years, John said. It could be as long as 12. It seems to have started around the time your wife was being considered for the top position. That was about a year after our daughter Sophie was born. Even so, I decided I'd need to get DNA tests done to see if the kids were mine. Then another thought crossed my mind. What about sexually transmitted diseases? The report revealed that Grant has a string of married women he's been sleeping with besides Linda. I know we've been intimate since she retired. But what if she's passed something on to me during that time? I'd need to get tested, and soon. As I skimmed through the report again, I let out a humorless scoff at Aaron's conclusion that Linda seemed blissfully unaware of what that jerk does when he's not with her. If it's any consolation, Mr. Walker, your wife's lover mentioned he never intended to break up your marriage. All he wanted was, well, her body, John said, and they never did anything at your house. I had let John install cameras and microphones in our home when I first hired him. At least my marital bed hadn't been defiled by Grant's bodily fluids, I thought. No, it's not any consolation, Mr. Michaels, I replied, but thanks for letting me know. I had met Grant Jacobs a few times, and I wasn't a fan. He was the kind of guy women would call attractive, but he was also arrogant, cocky, and had a smug look that always irritated me. I'd fought the urge to wipe that smirk off his face more than once. Now I knew the real reason behind it. There's more, Mr. Walker, John said. From what we've observed and heard, Jacob's sister, Natalie, has known about the affair from the very start. In fact, it seems she might have even played a role in making it happen. That saddened me a little, as I had always thought Natalie was a kind woman, completely unlike her brother. Damn, I muttered under my breath. Have you consulted a lawyer yet? John asked. Not yet, I replied. I wanted to uncover the truth first. Well, I do a lot of work with Lisa Hawkins. In my opinion, she's the best in the field. She has a strong dislike for cheaters. If you'd like, I can pass this on to her office and let her know you'll be reaching out. John offered. That would be helpful, I said. Thanks. I'll contact her office to set up an appointment. John handed me a business card, which I tucked into my pocket. Can I give you some advice? John asked. Of course, I replied. Let Lisa handle this. I know you're in pain right now and might feel the urge to retaliate. Don't. It's not worth ending up in jail over. This isn't just an online story, it's your real life. You have 2 kids to consider, he cautioned. I get it, I said. Thank you. I paid my bill and left his office, feeling like my entire marriage had been a lie. I knew John was right, but it didn't make the pain any easier. I got into my car and cried for about 15 minutes. After pulling myself together, I took out the card he gave me and called the law offices of Lisa Hawkins, scheduling an appointment for the following afternoon. Lisa provided me with a list of documents to bring, mostly financial statements. On my way home, I stopped by a convenience store and bought a pack of cigarettes, something I hadn't done since college. After that, I headed to a bar, trying to drown my sorrows with a beer. I'm not much of a drinker, but I felt like I deserved it this time. You all right, buddy? the bartender asked as I took a drag from my cigarette. I glanced up at him before replying. Is it that obvious? I asked. Afraid so, he replied with a slight smile. Let me guess. You just found out your wife's been cheating on you. Yeah, pretty much, I said. For the last 12 years, if you can believe that. I can believe it, he said. I've seen and heard just about everything working here. I bet you have, I replied. He chuckled at that. Mind if I share something my grandpa once told me? He asked. Go ahead, I said. He used to say, I felt sorry for myself because I had no shoes. Then I met a guy with no feet. I know you're hurting right now. Been there myself. But it gets better. And trust me, a lot of folks have had it worse than you. Your grandfather sounds like a wise man, I said. He was, the bartender said. Finish your beer, then go home, son. Take care of what you need to. You won't find answers at the bottom of that glass. Trust me. I smiled and nodded. Deep down, I knew this grizzled old bartender was right. I reflected on everything as I sipped my beer. I never thought Linda would actually cheat on me. Over the years, there were small signs, but none of them alone seemed like clear proof. Yet, looking back now, it all made sense, at least to me. For instance, after our second child, Sophie, was born, I had a vasectomy. Linda went back on birth control, which I found strange, so I asked her about it. I wondered why she needed it if I had undergone the procedure. She gave me an elaborate explanation about wanting to be extra cautious and mentioned that the pills would also help regulate her menstrual cycle. Since I'm not well versed in those matters, I accepted her reasoning. Later, when she got that new job and started traveling with Grant, I noticed some of her outfits didn't quite fit the business attire category. When I questioned her, she mentioned that entertaining was likely to become a significant part of her new role. Now I realize she was entertaining Grant. It turns out that part of her job was more important than I initially thought. No pun intended. I often called her in the evenings when she was away, and I noticed that she was always in her room when I called. However, there were a few occasions when I thought I heard someone else nearby. At times, her voice would tremble while we spoke, though I didn't think much of it at the time. Looking back, those moments now make more sense. There were also times when I noticed a familiar scent on her clothes when she came home. It was Grant's cologne, which I had smelled on him during our encounters. It puzzled me how it ended up on her, as it suggested they had been in close proximity. Then there were the Friday afternoons when she claimed she had to work, despite her supposed retirement. When I asked her about it, she explained, "My specific expertise is still in demand, so I've been kept on for one afternoon a week, with the possibility of some occasional travel." She added, "It's just business." But over time I realized there was more to it than that. One afternoon a week quickly turned into 2 or 3, and she rarely returned home before late in the evening. Her occasional trips, which started as monthly, soon increased to twice or even 3 times a month, often stretching over the weekend. So much for retirement. Oddly enough, Linda's attitude toward me never changed. She was just as loving and kind as ever, and she truly seemed to enjoy spending time with the kids and me. We appreciated having her around more often, and I took on more of the parenting due to her increasingly demanding schedule. I've been carrying this burden for quite some time, so I hired John's investigative firm to dig into her actions. Now, my worst suspicions have been confirmed. The only thing left to figure out is how to divide everything. If it had been just a one-time drunken mistake, I might have been able to move past it. Sure, I'd have been furious, but it wouldn't have been the end. But this? This was a cold, calculated betrayal that stretched over more than a decade. Now someone had to pay for it. I stubbed out my cigarette, finished my beer, and headed out, giving the bartender a nod and a generous tip for his time. I arrived home and noticed her car in the garage. To be honest, I was a little surprised to see her there. I closed the garage door and went inside. After taking off my jacket, I started towards my home office. But Linda stopped me on the way, immediately picking up the scent of cigarettes and beer. "You've been smoking," she said, her brow furrowed, "and I can smell beer. Is everything okay, John?" "No, honestly, it's not. In fact, today has been the worst day of my life," I replied. "What happened? Did someone die or something?" she asked, sounding genuinely concerned, though I couldn't help but question whether it was just an act. "Something like that," I muttered. "I'm heading to my office for the evening. I won't be much company tonight." "Is there anything I can do for you, sweetheart?" she offered. "Yeah," I thought, "you could start by fixing yourself." "I'm afraid there's nothing you can do," I said. "Oh, by the way, John, I'll be away this weekend, starting Friday," she added. It was only Tuesday, and she was already planning to be gone for another weekend. Again. "What? Again? Didn't you just take a weekend trip?" I asked. "Yes, but something's come up," she explained. "It's just business, you know." "I'm sure it is," I said sarcastically. "What about Sophie's birthday party? It's this Saturday." "I know," she said, "but it's unavoidable. Could you please be a sweetheart and explain to her why I can't make it? Please." "No," I replied. "I'm not covering for you anymore. You missed Erin's birthday last year and our anniversary. You can explain to our daughter why you'd rather be on a trip with Grant than here celebrating her birthday." Linda didn't take that well and let out a heavy sigh before answering. "John, you're being unreasonable," she said. "No, Linda," I said. "You supposedly retired months ago after the company was sold. But you've been away so often that I can't help but wonder what's really going on. Is there something you want to tell me? What are you implying? Are you accusing me of having an affair?" she asked, her tone defensive. "What would you think if the roles were reversed?" I asked. That seemed to make her hesitate. I see your point," she finally said, "but trust me, it's just business." "So you've said that," I responded to her. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have things to get done. Please don't interrupt. You'll need to take care of the kids tonight." I went into my home office, closed the door, and locked it. I heard Linda trying to open it. "John?" she called out. "Please, John, can we talk?" "Leave." "Mr. Alone, Linda," I replied through clenched teeth. "I'm busy." I heard her footsteps retreat, and I turned my attention to gathering the information Lisa had requested. Then I moved on to the evidence John had provided. As I read the report, it was hard to reconcile this with the woman I had loved and supported for the past 12 years. I put on my headphones and started playing the DVD. Unless you've been in my shoes, you just can't grasp the flood of emotions that come from watching the person you love more than anything willingly give herself to another man. I had no idea how John got those videos, and frankly, I didn't care. All I knew was that whatever love I had once felt for Linda was completely gone. Watching her with Grant, as they were together in his room, I made a silent vow to never be close to her again. I stayed to overhear their conversation afterward. "Are we still on for this weekend?" Grant asked, holding her close. "Of course," Linda replied with a smile. "You know I look forward to seeing you." "What about your daughter's birthday? Isn't that this weekend?" he inquired. "Yes, but John will be there," she answered. "He's really good with the kids. And honestly, if it's between managing a group of little girls or being here with you, I'd choose you every time." "I love having you here, Linda, but I'm starting to worry that he might be getting suspicious," Grant said, "especially since you're supposed to be retired now." "I told you before, Grant. Retired or not, I'm not giving this up. Yes, I love my family and I care for John, but this has become a part of my life," she replied. What we've had these past 12 years means more to me than you might realize." "I'm glad to hear you say that," Grant replied. "Remember when we first started? You said if given the choice, you'd stay with John and your kids. Do you still feel the same way?" "I honestly don't know," she admitted. "It hasn't come up." "I don't understand how you've managed to keep this going without him finding out," Grant said. "You know, if he ever does, there'll be serious consequences." "It wasn't easy at first," she said, "but I learned how to separate my work life from my home life. I've always tried to be kind to John, and I'm not worried about him finding out. If he does, I'll just deal with it." "It might not be that simple," Grant said, "but if anything happens, you can stay here. I enjoy having you around." "Thanks, Grant. I appreciate that, but I'm not worried. He hasn't figured it out in 12 years, and I doubt he ever will." "How long do you plan on keeping this up?" "As long as I can," she said. "Ideally, for the rest of my life." As their conversation ended, I shut down the video. I took the DVD out and locked it in my briefcase. Just then, I heard Linda knock on the office door. "What is it?" I asked. "The kids are heading to bed," she said. "Would you at least come say goodnight to them?" "Yeah, give me a minute," I replied. I shut down my computer and headed upstairs, not paying any attention to Linda. I forced a smile as I tucked the kids in. Sophie gave me a strange look. "Daddy, are you okay?" she asked. "Yeah, I'm fine," I said, smiling at her. "Now go to sleep, sweetheart. I love you." "I love you too," she said, giving me a kiss. I left her room, went downstairs, and poured myself a cup of coffee. "I kept a plate warm for you, John," Linda said. "I'm not hungry," I muttered as I stepped outside. I sat on one of the chairs on the back deck and lit a cigarette. A couple of minutes later, Linda followed me out. She leaned in to kiss me, but I turned away and her kiss landed on my cheek. There was no way I could bring myself to kiss her after everything. She stared at me in shock. "Talk to me, John. Please." "What's bothering you?" she asked, her face filled with concern. "I've never seen you like this, and you know I hate it when you smoke. You haven't smoked since college." "Yeah, well, we don't always get what we want, do we?" I replied. "What's that supposed to mean?" she asked. I just shook my head, saying nothing. "John, please, talk to me. I love you. You know you can tell me anything." I glanced at her through the cloud of smoke and shook my head again. "I'm afraid it's too late for that," I said. "Too late for what?" "I don't understand," she said. "You're a smart businesswoman," I replied. "Figure it out. Now please, leave me alone. I've got things I need to work through." "But maybe I could help if you'd just tell me what's going on," she said, her voice desperate. "Linda, for the last time, just leave." "Mr. Alone," I said, my voice laced with anger. Realizing I might be revealing too much, I softened my tone. "Sorry for being short. This work situation is bad and it's really getting to me. Maybe in a couple of days." I didn't like lying, but thought, why not? It's okay to lie to a liar, right? "Okay," she said softly, her eyes filling with tears. She backed away, then turned and hurried into the house. I finished 2 more cigarettes before heading inside myself. I took a shower to freshen up and put on a pair of pajamas, which I rarely wore, before getting into bed. Linda was already lying on her side and turned toward me once we were both under the covers. She reached for me, but I gently moved her hand away. It was the first time in our marriage that I had ever distanced myself like that. "John," she began, but I turned away, not even offering her a goodnight kiss. "Good night, Linda," I said. She quietly cried as she turned away, but in that moment I felt distant. My emotions were too clouded to care. The next morning I got up, showered, dressed, and gathered my things for work. I spent some time with the kids before they headed off to school, then left the house without acknowledging Linda. She gave me a strange look as I made my way to the door. "Don't I get a kiss anymore?" she asked as I opened the door. "Oh, right," I said, blowing her a kiss. "I love you," she said. "Yeah, same," I replied as I walked out. At the office, I managed to get some work done, though it wasn't easy. I told my boss what was happening, and he understood, as he'd recently gone through a divorce himself. "Take care of what you need to," he said. "If you need to take some time off, just let me know." I thanked him and went back to work, leaving early for my appointment with Lisa. "Good afternoon, Mr. Walker," she greeted me when I was shown into her office. Lisa Hawkins appeared to be around my age, mid-30s, with long blonde hair cascading over her shoulders. I noticed the rings on her finger and figured she was married. "Please, Mrs. Hawkins, call me John," I said as I shook her hand. "And you can call me Lisa," she replied. "I read the report Mr. Michaels sent over. I'm really sorry you're going through this. I see this kind of situation all the time, but it still gets to me. How are you holding up?" "Not great, honestly," I admitted. "I can understand," she said. "Have you spoken to her yet?" "Not yet, but I was pretty short with her last night," I said. "My advice is to try to stay civil with her. I know it's going to be difficult after everything you found out, but you don't want to tip her off that you know. Not yet. Let her think everything's normal. She'll get her reality check when she's served. Can you handle that?" "You're right, it's going to be tough, very tough," I said. "But I'll try my best." "Good," Lisa said. "Now what are you looking to get out of this divorce?" "As much as I can," I said. "I definitely want custody of the kids, assuming they're actually mine." "You do realize that in most cases the mother gets custody, right?" she asked. "I've been their primary caregiver for the past 10 years, I said, "and you heard her in the video admitting I'm a better parent. Plus, the fact that she'd rather be with her lover than her daughter on her birthday should count for something." "It does, and we can likely use that," Lisa said as she reviewed the financial records I had brought. She made notes as she went through them. "It looks like your wife got a significant payout from the company she worked for. Her dividend checks are comparable to your salary, which definitely works in our favor." "So does that mean no alimony?" I asked. "Or very little," Lisa said. "She's still young, so there's no reason she can't continue working. In fact, if we get you custody, we might even push for her to pay child support." "What about the house?" I asked. "If you get custody, you could stay in the house, and we can request that she cover half the mortgage. However, if the court grants her custody, you'd have to pay half the mortgage and child support," she explained. "The other option would be to sell the house and split the proceeds." "What about our retirement and bank accounts?" I asked. "We can make the deal more appealing by excluding the retirement accounts. You both keep your 401k, the rest will be split 50-50. That's what a judge would likely order here anyway," she replied. "And Grant Jacobs? Can I sue him for alienation of affection?" I asked. "Not in this state," she said, "but we'll definitely name him in the divorce. There might be grounds for a lawsuit for intentional infliction of emotional distress, but I don't think that would go far. Not here, anyway." "What about his sister, Natalie? She knew about it the whole time. Might have even helped," I said. "It's the same deal with her. We can file if you want," Lisa said. "Yes, do it. When can you file all of this?" I asked. "I think we can get it done by Friday," she said. "Why?" "I want her served late Saturday afternoon. She'll be spending the weekend with Grant," I said. "Ah, a bit of shock and awe. I think we can arrange that," she said. "But it'll cost extra to have the process server go out on Saturday." "That's fine," I said. "Go ahead." "Okay, John," she said. We wrapped up the meeting with a handshake, and she gave me the usual warning not to do anything reckless before taking my retainer check. I left her office feeling a bit more in control of the situation. When I got home, I was a little surprised to see Linda's car in the garage. I thought she would be at the office since it was Wednesday. I touched the hood of her car, and it was still warm, meaning she had been back not too long ago. As I stepped inside, the smell of pot roast filled the air. "Hi, sweetheart," Linda said as she walked out of the kitchen. "You're home a bit early. Everything all right?" "Yeah," I replied. "I hope you're feeling better than yesterday," she added. "A little better. I'm getting things under control," I told her. "Good. Are you up for dinner tonight?" she asked. "I made pot roast. Your favorite." "I'll have a bit," I said. "It smells great. Did you go into the office today?" "Yeah, just for a couple of hours," she replied, "getting things prepped for the weekend." "Did you talk to Sophie?" I asked. "Yeah, she's not too thrilled, but she'll be fine. She's still young," Linda said. "Where are the kids?" I asked. "In their rooms doing homework," she answered. "So you're still going on this trip with Grant?" I asked. "Yes, like I said, it's purely business," she said, sounding firm. "Just business." "When are you planning to actually retire?" I asked. "I'm already retired," she said. "They just need my expertise for a bit longer. I'm not sure how much more time they'll need me." "Honestly, it seems like you're practically working full-time again." "But I guess you just got to do what you need to do," I said. "What do you mean by that?" she asked. "With all the time you're dedicating to them, you might as well be getting paid," I replied. "Why?" she asked. "I'm bringing in more now with my retirement." I placed my briefcase in my office and changed into more casual clothes. I complimented her on the pot roast. She had always been an excellent cook, and I knew I'd miss that when we parted ways. After spending time with the kids, I went to my office and locked the door. Linda tried to open it but knocked when she realized it was locked. I cracked the door just enough to see her face. "John?" she asked. "Are you going to stay in here tonight?" "Yeah, I think so," I said. "I've got a lot to go over, and I'm feeling a bit under the weather. I don't want to risk you getting sick right before your trip, so I'll crash on the futon in here tonight." "Oh, okay," she said. "Feel better, John. Please. I love you." "Yeah, same here," I said, closing the door. I heard her footsteps fade away, then turned to my computer. I conducted a search, found what I needed, and filled out a form. I checked my email for confirmation and noted the phone number, setting a reminder on my phone to call the next day to confirm everything was set as requested. The following day, Thursday, was almost identical to Wednesday, except that Linda tried to seduce me by wearing a sheer, revealing nightgown that left nothing to the imagination. I had always enjoyed looking at her and being with her, but now that I knew what she'd been doing with Grant behind my back, her body no longer attracted me in the slightest. "I'm sorry, Linda, but I feel a terrible migraine coming on," I said softly. "I'm going to take something for it and sleep in the office tonight." A tear rolled down her cheek as she turned and walked away, but I didn't care. She called me around noon the next day to let me know she was leaving. "I hope you're feeling better, John," she said. "Maybe we can reconnect when I return on Monday. My parents are picking the kids up from school today and will bring them back tomorrow afternoon for Sophie's party." "Thanks for letting me know," I replied. "I really do love you, John," she added. "I hope you believe that." "Yeah," I said. "Have a safe trip." "See you later. Goodbye, Linda." I ended the call and immediately dialed Lisa's number. "I'm processing all the paperwork right now, John," she said. "They'll be served at 5:30 tomorrow at Grant's house, just as you requested. Natalie will be served on Monday." "Thanks, Lisa," I said, ending the call. I told my assistant I was leaving early for the day, locked up my office, and headed home. I had a lot to take care of before the movers arrived that afternoon. There was a stack of boxes in the garage that I had been gathering for exactly this kind of work. I had just finished packing everything up when the movers arrived with their truck at 5 p.m. They loaded everything into the back while I wrapped up my final adjustments on Linda's wedding dress. Once that was done, I placed the ashes in a paper bag, folded the top, and stapled an envelope to it. Inside the envelope was a brief note, my wedding ring, and our marriage certificate, which I had ripped into 4 pieces. I handed the bag to one of the movers, requesting that it be delivered to Linda personally when they arrived at Grant's house at 5:30 p.m. the following day. I also included 2 $50 bills as tips for the 2 men. "I'll personally handle this, Mr. Walker," the young mover assured me, taking the bag. "Thank you," I replied. Afterward, I reheated some leftover pot roast and watched TV while eating in the living room. That night, I slept soundly in the master bedroom. By noon the next day, Linda's parents arrived with the kids. I had already been awake for some time, preparing the backyard for Sophie's birthday party, which was set to start around 3 p.m. Linda had ordered a cake, which I picked up earlier that morning and stored in the fridge. "You've certainly been busy," Rhonda, Linda's mother, commented when she came in. "I didn't really have much of a choice," I replied. "I just hope everything goes smoothly." "I'm sure the kids will have a wonderful time," she reassured me. "Did Sophie tell you that Linda won't be coming?" I asked. "Yes, she did," Rhonda replied. "I can't believe she wouldn't show up for her own daughter's birthday." She gave me a strange look before continuing. "Is everything okay between you two?" I sent the kids upstairs to get ready for the party before turning back to Rhonda and her husband, George. "No, it's not," I admitted. "I hate to say this, but you'll find out sooner or later anyway. I'm divorcing Linda." "What?" George asked. "Why?" "I found out earlier this week that she's been having an affair with her boss for the last 12 years, I explained. "In fact, that's what she's doing right now." "Oh my God," Rhonda gasped. "Are you absolutely sure?" "Yes, I am." I've had my suspicions for a while, but things didn't add up after she supposedly retired. About a month ago, I hired a private investigator to look into it. I have a full report from him, with photos and plenty of video evidence, if you'd like to see it, I said. "No, that's not necessary," she replied. "Are you certain you can't forgive her?" "I'm positive," I said. "Not after all these years." "I'd like to see that report," George said. "I can't believe she'd do something so reckless." "While you're doing that, I'll finish getting things ready for Sophie's party," Rhonda said. I thanked Rhonda and gestured for George to follow me into my home office. I handed him my copy of the written report. As he read through the details of his daughter's actions with Grant, his eyes widened. When he finished, he shook his head. "That damn idiot," he muttered, returning the report. "I know she's my daughter, John, but this is hard for me to handle." "Now you can understand a bit of how I feel," I replied. "What are you planning to do about this Grant jerk?" he asked. "I filed a lawsuit against him and his sister for causing emotional distress on purpose," I said. He scoffed at that. "Is that it?" he asked. "This guy's been involved with your wife for 12 years, and all you're going to do is file a lawsuit? You know how far that's going to go, right?" "I understand, George," I replied. "I'd love to confront him, but that's just going to land me in trouble. I have 2 kids to think about, and I can't do much for them from behind bars." George nodded. "Yeah, you're probably right," he said. "But from what I've heard, Grant has a habit of getting involved with married women. Linda's probably not the first." "Probably not," I agreed. "Tell you what, John," George said, "why don't you let me deal with him?" "He's not worth you getting in trouble either," I replied. "Don't worry, son," he said. "No one's getting in trouble." George, being a tough guy, had connections. I'd met some of the guys he worked with. They were big, strong, and always had each other's backs. "What are you planning to do?" I asked. "The less you know, the better," George said with a wink and a grin. "All right, if you say so," I told him. He smiled, clapped me on the shoulder, and said, "Come on, John. Let's go enjoy some time with the kids." We headed to the backyard where Rhonda had finished setting up for the party. When Sophie came downstairs, her eyes lit up, and she gasped at the decorations. "Thank you, Daddy," she said, throwing her arms around my neck. "This is amazing. I just wish Mom was here to see it." "Me too," I replied. "We can take some pictures for her to see later, okay?" "Okay," she agreed. I got busy grilling hamburgers and hot dogs for everyone. Around 4:30 p.m., the doorbell rang, and I knew things were about to pick up. Over the next half hour, more than a dozen parents arrived with their kids, all of them Sophie's friends, enjoying the backyard. Among the last to arrive were Natalie, her husband Ralph, and their daughter Denise. I welcomed them in and showed Denise to the backyard where the party was in full swing. I offered Natalie and Ralph something to drink, which they accepted graciously. "I'm surprised to see you, Natalie. I thought you had an important business trip this weekend," I said. "That's Grant and Linda's thing," she replied. "I just helped them out at the office." "Uh-huh," I muttered. "John, is everything okay?" Natalie asked. "Between you and Linda, I mean?" "Why do you ask?" I responded. "You're not wearing your wedding ring," she pointed out. I glanced at my hand, noticing the mark where it used to be. "I gave it back to her," I said. "Maybe Grant will have better luck with her than I did." "What's that supposed to mean?" Natalie asked, looking confused. "Oh, come on, Natalie," I said. "Don't pretend. I know about your brother and Linda. It's been going on for 12 years, hasn't it? I have to admit, you all did a pretty good job keeping me in the dark." "John, please, Linda still cares about you," Natalie insisted. "Yeah, she cared so much that she lied and hid things for over a decade. I can't tell you how wonderful that makes me feel," I said with heavy sarcasm. "So, what are you going to do?" Natalie asked. "What do you think? I'm divorcing her. She and Grant will be served soon," I replied, glancing at my watch. "Served?" Natalie asked. "Yes. Linda will get the divorce papers, and I'm suing Grant. You'll be served on Monday," I said. "Me? Why are you suing me? I didn't do anything," Natalie responded. "Exactly," I said. "For over a decade you knew what was going on. In fact, my PI thinks you might have even helped. And all that time you acted like my friend. You could have said or done something, but you didn't. How many times have you sat in my home, eaten at my table? How many times have you enjoyed my hospitality, all while knowing what Linda was doing with your brother? Did it amuse you, making me look like a fool? Now my marriage and family are destroyed, and you're partly responsible. Thanks to the three of you, I'll never be able to love or trust another woman again, and my children have lost their mother. I hope you're satisfied." "John, I'm not satisfied at all," she said. "I'm sorry." "Sorry isn't enough, Natalie," I said. "For 12 years, the three of you worked to ruin my family. You didn't care what it would do to me or my kids, and now you've succeeded." "It's not like that at all," Natalie said. "Oh, really? What was it, just business between the three of you?" "At first, yes," she replied. "Actually, it was Grant's idea from the start. Linda wanted the job, so she went along with it, but she wasn't happy. Over time, things changed." "And after you sold the company and supposedly retired?" I asked. "That was entirely her decision," Natalie said. "I thought it would end, but Linda chose to keep the relationship going." "Well, she made a bad choice," I said, "but you still had a part in it." "I'm really sorry for that, John," she said. "None of us ever wanted to hurt you." "But you did," I replied, "in the worst way possible. I think it's best if you gather your family and leave my house, Natalie." She nodded. "I understand, John," she said softly, turning to leave. "Natalie," I called after her. She turned back. "Don't ever come back." She wiped a tear from her face, then went to get Denise and Ralph. Linda and Grant were lying NACD in his bed when her phone buzzed, signaling a new message. Assuming it was John sending her photos from Sophie's party, she grabbed her phone from the nightstand and checked the message from Natalie. He knows everything. "Oh no," she gasped. "What's wrong?" Grant asked. "It's Natalie. She says John knows everything," Linda replied. "I should clean up and head home." "Are you sure that's a good idea?" Grant asked. "Yes," Linda said, getting out of bed and slipping into a bathrobe. At that moment, they heard the doorbell ring. "Who could that be?" Grant asked, climbing out of bed and glancing out the window. "What the—" he muttered, spotting a sedan and a moving truck in his driveway. He quickly put on his trousers and a robe before heading downstairs, with Linda following close behind. When he opened the door, he was met by a man in a light jacket. "Can I help you?" Grant asked. "Are you Grant Jacobs?" the man inquired. "Yes," Grant replied. "And is Linda Walker here?" "That's me," Linda said, stepping out from behind Grant. "I'll need to see some ID, please," the man said. "What for?" Grant asked as he reached for his wallet. The man remained silent as he examined Grant's ID. Then he handed Grant an envelope. "You've been served," the man said. "Ms. Walker? I'll need to see your identification as well." "Of course," Linda replied, taking her wallet out of her purse. The man checked her ID and gave her an envelope. "You've been served," he repeated. "Also, there's a restraining order included in the documents I've just given you. You are both required to stay at least 500 feet away from Mr. John Walker, his home, his workplace, and his 2 children, including their school. Violating this order could result in your arrest. Good day." As the man turned to leave, Linda and Grant stared at each other, stunned. "Excuse me, is one of you Linda Walker?" Another man dressed in jeans and a t-shirt asked. "Yes, that's me," Linda answered. He handed her a paper bag with an envelope attached to it, and she looked at it, puzzled. "I was asked to personally deliver this to you, ma'am. I also have several other boxes here. Where should I put them?" the man asked. Grant and Linda exchanged glances before either responded. Just put them in the front room for now," Grant said. "Thank you, sir," the man said before heading back to the truck. As the 2 of them watched, the workers carried several boxes into the front room as directed. While they were unloading, Linda opened the envelope. Inside was a man's wedding ring, a note, and her marriage certificate, torn into 4 pieces. Linda began to cry as she read the note. "Linda," the typed note began, "I've done nothing but love and support you throughout our marriage. Imagine my shock to find out you've been sleeping with Grant Jacobs for the past 12 years. This is how you repaid my love, by lying and cheating on me. For all this time you claimed it was just business, but I've come to realize it was much more than that. I hope it was all worth it. I recommend you consult an attorney as soon as possible. The sooner, the better. I've already divided our finances according to the divorce papers and changed the locks on the doors. Since I've been the primary caregiver for the children since your relationship with Grant began 12 years ago, I am requesting full custody. However, I will not deny you visitation rights. Please have your lawyer reach out to mine to arrange this. Additionally, since Grant mentioned you could stay with him, I've sent all your belongings to his place. If there's anything else you need from our home, have your lawyer contact mine, and we can set up a time for you to collect whatever you believe belongs to you. I have no intention of seeing you or hearing any more of your lies. Please refrain from contacting either the children or me. I assure you, I will enforce the restraining order if you attempt to reach out. Do not contest the terms of the divorce. I wish to avoid making this more difficult than necessary for the children's sake, but I will fight back if you decide to oppose it. For your information, I possess photographs, several videos, and a detailed report from a private investigator who has been monitoring your activities for the past month. I haven't informed the children about the reasons for the divorce yet, but I will when the time feels appropriate. Your parents have seen the report, but they haven't viewed the photos or videos, at least not yet. For once, do the right thing and put an end to this charade of a marriage. As of now, Linda, you are no longer part of my life. Goodbye." The note was signed, John. Tears streamed down her face as she opened the paper bag and discovered the ashes of her wedding gown, the very dress she wore when she married John. She collapsed on the floor, weeping. Grant embraced her and read the letter aloud. "That bastard," he exclaimed. "I'll deal with him for this." "No, Grant, please don't. I don't want to see you in jail. This is all my fault," she replied. "What did he say?" "He's suing me for intentional infliction of emotional distress," Grant explained. "He's demanding $5 million. I'll contact my lawyer to discuss our options." "I wonder if he's going after Natalie too," Linda pondered. "Let's find out," Grant replied, picking up his phone. "If he is, we need to meet and strategize to minimize the fallout." After the birthday party concluded, I expressed my gratitude to everyone for attending and for their gifts. As I turned around, I noticed the messy house and realized I would have a lot to tidy up. Sophie approached me with tears in her eyes. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I asked, pulling her into my arms. "I wish Mom could have been here," she replied. "I miss her." "Yeah, I miss her too," I said. "But unfortunately, your mom had other commitments." Sophie looked at me with a sad expression. "Are you getting a divorce?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. I didn't want to spoil her day, but I knew I would have to discuss it with her eventually. "We'll talk about that later, okay?" "It's that Grant guy, isn't it?" Aaron interjected. "What makes you think that?" I replied. "I've heard Mom talking to him on the phone a few times," he said. Interesting, I thought, but I decided not to delve into it further for now. "We'll discuss this tomorrow," I said firmly. "Today is Sophie's birthday, and right now, I need you to help me clean up, all right?" "Okay, Dad," Aaron replied. I hugged Sophie again and kissed her cheek. "It'll be all right," I reassured her, wiping a tear from her face. "I love you." "I love you too, Daddy," she said. Rhonda and George stayed to help us clean. "Are you going to be okay, John?" Rhonda asked before they left. "I'll manage," I replied. "Thanks for coming over and lending a hand." "Anytime," she said. "If you need anything at all, don't hesitate to ask." "I appreciate it," I told her. Rhonda gave me a hug, and George shook my hand. "Take care, son," he said. Once they drove off, I closed and locked the door. Exhausted, I went upstairs and fell asleep almost immediately after my head hit the pillow. The following day, I woke up and completed my usual Sunday chores after preparing breakfast for the three of us. I mowed the lawn while Aaron used the edger to tidy up the yard. Once we were done, we cleaned everything and put it away. It was time for lunch, so I headed inside, took a shower, and was somewhat surprised to find Sophie making sandwiches for us. We ate at the table, then put our plates away. When we finished, Sophie looked at me and said, "All right, Dad, you need to tell us what's going on." I dreaded this moment, but I knew it was inevitable, so I gathered the kids in the living room and had them sit down. "There's no easy way to say this, so I'll just be straightforward," I began. "I'm divorcing your mother." The kids absorbed my announcement quietly, without any outbursts. I had expected them to be upset, but they seemed to take it in stride. "She's been cheating on you with that Grant guy, hasn't she?" Aaron asked. "Yeah," I replied quietly, nodding. "I thought so," Aaron said. "I bet it's been happening for a while, right?" "What makes you say that?" I asked. "Just the way she talks to him," he replied. "I've heard her on the phone. She talks to him like she talks to you, Dad." I nodded in agreement. How had I missed that? The answer was clear. Until recently, I had always trusted her and respected her privacy. I never felt the need to listen in on her conversations with Grant or anyone else. "So how long has it been going on, Dad?" Sophie inquired. As far as I can tell, about 12 years, sweetheart, I said. She gasped at this revelation. That means she started not long after I was born, she remarked. Pretty much, I replied. Damn her, Sophie exclaimed. Sorry, Dad, she quickly added. I understood her frustration, so I let it slide this time. Can I stay with you? She asked. Of course, if that's what you want, I said. Me too, Dad, Aaron chimed in. You've always been here for us. Thank you, guys. That means more to me than you realize. The truth is, I've requested custody of you both, I explained. I opened my arms and they both came to me, wrapping their arms around me. We shared a group hug, and I felt an overwhelming joy that my children wanted to stay with me. After our tearful embrace, we went about the rest of the day without incident, but the house felt heavy with sadness. The following couple of days passed without any issues. George and Rhonda agreed to pick up the kids after school and stayed at my place until I returned from work. I felt bad imposing on them, but they were understanding and willingly helped out. Rhonda even prepared dinner for us, which was a huge relief. On Tuesday, I received a call from my attorney, Lisa. Linda had consulted with her own attorney and wanted to see the children. I was against her coming to the house, worried that she might do something rash, like take the kids away. What about the restraining order? I inquired. If you consent, we could put that on hold for a specific time, perhaps from 9 p.m. Friday to 9 a.m. Sunday, Lisa replied. I realize this is difficult, but you want to avoid coming across as unreasonable. I understand. What if she meets with the kids at her parents' house on Saturday? I proposed. I could let the kids stay there Friday after school and then pick them up either Saturday night or Sunday. I'll suggest that and check with her lawyer, Lisa said. Under no circumstances should Grant or Natalie be there with her, I insisted. There's also a chance the kids may not want to see her. They're not particularly pleased with her at the moment. I'll make sure to relay that, Lisa assured me. Is there anything else? I asked. Yes, her lawyer wants to review the complete private investigator's report, Lisa informed me. I've compiled a copy and sent it off. She should receive it by Thursday at the latest. So she has hired a lawyer? I inquired. Yes, she retained Beth Sawyer on Monday, Lisa confirmed. I'm surprised Beth took the case since she has a strong dislike for cheaters much like me. I suspect it's because they work at the same firm as Grant's lawyer. In any case, I'll reach out to Beth and see what unfolds. I'll keep you updated. I received a response from Lisa the following day. Linda and her attorney accepted my conditions, as long as I agreed to lift the restraining order for 36 hours, from midnight Saturday to noon Sunday. This would only apply to Linda and not to Grant or Natalie. They also agreed that Linda could spend time with the children at her parents' house, with the stipulation that she wouldn't take them anywhere. If the children were comfortable with the arrangement, Linda could stay there overnight with them. I accepted these terms, not wanting to come across as unreasonable to the court. Initially, the children weren't thrilled about the situation, but I managed to convince them to give it a chance. George and Rhonda offered to pick them up after school on Friday and would return them home Sunday afternoon after their visit. Although I had my doubts, I trusted George and Rhonda. George even suggested taking me to a bar to catch a game over a beer that Saturday night. That Friday morning, I ensured the children had everything they needed for the weekend. We shared hugs and kisses before I dropped them off at school, and I reminded them to call me if Grant or Natalie showed up, or if their mother attempted to take them somewhere. I left for work after I was sure they were safely inside the building. The following evening, around 5:30, George picked me up at my house and we headed to the Flatstick Pub, a well-liked sports bar downtown. We ordered a burger and a beer while watching various events displayed on the large screens around the venue. Between bites, George filled me in on the latest. Linda came over around 9 this morning, he mentioned. It was a bit tense at first, but things calmed down eventually. The kids aren't thrilled with her and made their feelings clear. However, she was honest about everything, which surprised me. "I'm surprised too," I replied. "She says she still loves you. I have a feeling she's going to try to reconcile," George said. "Is that something you're open to?" "I'm afraid not, George," I responded. "Not after 12 years of lies and betrayal." "I can see where you're coming from. Did you really burn her wedding dress?" "That cost me over $2,000 when you two got married," George asked. "It felt like the right thing to do at the time," I said. "She mentioned that her lawyer reviewed the private investigator's report and really laid into her," George said. "I think she's beginning to understand your perspective." "Too little, too late," I said. George nodded and took a sip of beer. Suddenly, I heard a noise behind me, and when I turned around, something hit me on the head, making me dizzy. I fell to the floor and saw that someone's foot was aiming at my head. Confused, I managed to jump aside in time. "I'll answer for that," I heard Grant scream. When I looked up, I saw that he was standing over me, and I realized that I had to act quickly. Remembering the defensive techniques my father taught me many years ago, I kicked up, intending to push him away. He staggered back, hitting the nearest table. He fell to the floor and I quickly followed him, trying to defend myself. Adrenaline and frustration took over when I started to resist. There was no special technique involved, just unbridled emotions and a desperate need to protect myself from the man who caused so much pain in my life. Grant stopped moving, and it was only then that it dawned on me that the confrontation was over. I felt 2 sets of hands attempting to lift me off Grant, and realized they belonged to George and another man. I remember letting out a howl before losing consciousness. Although it felt like an eternity, I later learned that the whole incident lasted less than a minute. I woke up in a hospital bed with a doctor examining me and shining a light in my eyes. My right hand was wrapped in bandages, while my left hand and forearm were in a cast. I also noticed an IV in my arm. My head was pounding with pain. "I think he's going to be okay," the doctor said. "He'll have a significant headache for a while, but I don't see any signs of a concussion. We'll give him something to relieve the pain and let him rest for a bit before we discharge him." "Thank you, doctor," I heard George say. Puzzled, I turned to him. He smiled back at me. "Did you hear that, son? You're going to be fine. I know it hurts, but just wait until you hear about the other guy. I heard that you inflicted serious injuries on him." "I suppose it was a Grant." "Yeah," I rasped. "How long have I been here?" "Overnight. It's now 8:30 on Sunday morning," George replied. "By the way, there are a couple of very large police officers outside who would like to speak with you. Are you ready for that?" "Yeah, might as well get it over with," I said. George gestured to the officers, and they entered the room. "Mr. Walker, I'm Sergeant Smith, and this is Officer Jones. We responded to your altercation at the Flatstick pub last night. How are you feeling this morning, sir?" he inquired. "Like I've been hit upside the head," I replied. Smith smiled and looked over his notes. "What can you tell us about last night?" he asked. "Not much," I responded. "I was having a burger and a beer with my father-in-law, and the next thing I knew, I was getting hit in the head. The guy threatened to kill me, so I defended myself." Smith nodded in understanding. "That aligns with what the witnesses reported," Smith remarked, glancing at his notes. "And the surveillance footage corroborates that. Do you recognize the man who assaulted you?" "Yes, Sergeant. His name is Grant Jacobs. I have a lawsuit against him, and he's involved in my divorce," I replied. "Divorce?" the sergeant inquired. "Yes," I confirmed. "Got it," he said as he jotted something down. "I assume you wish to file charges." "Yes, I do," I responded. "There's also a restraining order in place against him." "Understood," he replied. "We'll look into that. We'll handle things from here, Mr. Walker." Someone might want to speak with you later, so I'd advise you not to leave town for a while." "That won't be a problem, Sergeant," I replied, raising my hands. He smiled and nodded before leaving the room. After they departed, Rhonda, Linda, and the kids entered. "What's she doing here?" I asked, glancing at Linda. "My restraining order doesn't take effect until noon," Linda explained. "I thought you'd be with your boyfriend," I commented. She lowered her gaze, looking embarrassed. "I wanted to see you first," she said. "Plus, Natalie's with him, and he's still recovering." I nodded as the kids gathered beside me. Sophie had tears in her eyes. "Are you going to be okay, Daddy?" she asked. "I'll be fine, sweetheart," I assured her. "I heard you really gave Grant a beating last night," Aaron said with a grin. "That's what I've heard too," I replied, glancing at George, "but it's not something to be proud of. Do you understand what I'm saying?" "I hear you, Dad," Aaron answered. "Are you going to be all right, John?" Linda asked. "Yes, he'll be just fine," Sophie reassured her mother. "We'll take good care of him, won't we, Aaron?" "Absolutely," my son agreed. Linda then looked at our two teenagers before speaking. "If you don't mind, I'd like to talk to your father for a few minutes. Alone," she said. They exchanged glances before nodding in agreement. "All right," Sophie said, "but we'll be right outside the door. Come on, Aaron," she added, reaching for her brother. They exited the room, followed by George and Rhonda. "John," Linda started after they left, "I can't express how sorry I am about everything." "Well, as I told Natalie last Saturday, saying sorry doesn't even begin to cover it," I replied. "You lied to me and cheated on me for, 12 years? And you think sorry is supposed to make it all disappear? Was I really such a terrible husband? All I ever did was love and support you. I just don't understand." You are, the best husband and father a woman could ask for," she said sadly. "But that still wasn't enough for you, was it?" "It's not like that at all," she insisted. "Really?" "That's how it appears to me," I countered. "You don't understand," she replied. "Then help me understand," I urged. "At first it was just about getting my job," she explained. "Grant said having intimacy with me was one of the conditions for getting the position." "That's intimacy harassment," I said. "That's illegal. Why didn't you come to me first? We could have done something about it." "Oh, I see. You really wanted that job, so much that you thought sleeping with Grant was a minor cost, even if it meant destroying our family." "Basically, I made a deal with the devil," she admitted. "So now you're going to put the blame on someone else?" I asked. "Come on, Linda. The truth is, you were so focused on getting that job that you made decisions that cost us everything. You always said, 'It's just business,' right? But tell me, how does the destruction of our family fit into your plans? I want to know why you kept it going even after you said you were done." "That was my mistake," she admitted. "I guess I reached a point where I thought I could balance everything." "You developed feelings for him, didn't you? That's why it didn't stop. How long did you think you could keep it up? Did you really believe I'd never find out? Or did you think that even if I did, I'd just accept it?" "Trust me, Linda, I know more than you think," I said. "Yeah, I did develop feelings for him," she confessed. "It was hard not to after all those years. I figured you loved me enough to let me have this balance. I tried my best to keep it from affecting you." "Are you serious?" I asked, stunned. "Every moment you spent with him was time you took away from us. You remember what opportunity cost is, right? You chose him over your family, and because of that, you lost your family." "But I still love you," she insisted. "I never stopped loving you." "But you stopped respecting me," I said, watching her reaction. "No, never," she quickly replied. "Yes, you did," I said. "That's why you told him you'd stay with him no matter what. And you know, I overheard more than you think." "You heard that?" she asked, eyes wide. "Yes, and more," I replied. "For example, you told him you'd rather spend time with him than with our daughter on her birthday. What kind of message do you think that sends to her? And what about Aaron when you missed his birthday last year?" She winced. "I guess I've failed as a wife and mother," she whispered. "Your words, not mine. But if the truth fits, you can't deny it," I shrugged. "By the way, your friend Grant doesn't need to worry about anything from me. I had DNA tests done, and the kids are mine." Her eyes widened in shock. "Oh my God! You really thought I would do that to you?" she exclaimed. "Well, after you lied to me for 12 years and kept secrets, what did you expect?" I replied. "And by the way, you might want to know that you're not the only person Grant's been involved with." I had my suspicions, but I wasn't entirely sure. "What do you want me to do now?" she asked. "Sign the papers, Linda. Put an end to this farce of a marriage. Then seek help and get your life in order, for the kids' sake," I replied. "You'll likely have plenty of time for that. I think Grant will probably be spending some time in state custody." "You're probably right," she admitted. "Okay, I'll sign the papers. I'm sorry, John. For everything." "You've said that before," I reminded her. "I guess I have. Anyway, thank you for allowing me to spend some time with the kids this weekend," she said. "You're welcome," I responded. "I know you don't believe me, but I still love you," she said. "I wish you could find it in your heart for us to stay together." "You're right. I don't believe you. But I appreciate you saying it," I replied. "A small part of me will always love you too, but it's not enough. I need to trust my partner, and after what you've done, I'm not sure I can ever trust anyone again." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand," she whispered. "Goodbye, John." She leaned in and kissed my cheek. "Goodbye, Linda," I said as she turned and walked away in tears. Just then, George, Rhonda, and the kids entered the room. "Everything okay, son?" George asked. "Yeah," I replied. "We had a conversation. I think she finally understands how badly she messed up." "Does this mean you and Mom are getting back together?" Sophie inquired. I shook my head. "No, sweetheart," I said. "But you both love each other," she insisted. "It takes more than love to make a marriage work, Sophie," I explained. "It requires trust, and right now, I don't trust her. One day, you'll come to understand that for yourself." The doctor came in to check on me one last time before releasing me. George then took me home with the kids. Later that evening, I received a panicked call from George and Linda. Natalie had reached out to inform them that Linda attempted SUID by overdosing on sleeping pills and alcohol. They explained that Natalie discovered Linda when she went to Grant's house to collect some of his belongings. On Linda's nightstand, a note simply stated, "I'm sorry." She nearly lost her life from the overdose, but managed to survive and spent a few days in the hospital. After being evaluated by mental health professionals, she was released into George and Rhonda's custody and eventually moved back in with them. She signed the divorce papers without contesting anything. Lisa informed me that I would be a free man in 90 days. Free? Yeah, right. Grant and Natalie's attorney quickly settled with us for half of my initial request. Consequently, I ended up with around $3.5 million after Lisa's share. I allocated $1 million into accounts for both children to support their college expenses and save the rest. I began planning a Mediterranean cruise for us during their next summer vacation. Grant was convicted of aggravated assault, battery, and attempted murder, based on video evidence from his attack. He received a 10-year prison sentence, but could be eligible for parole in approximately 8.5 years. I saw Linda each time I took the kids to George and Rhonda's home. We would occasionally sit and chat, but I could never move past what she had done. She sought counseling to help her understand her actions and continued to cling to the hope that I would take her back. While I was pleased she was receiving help, it felt like shutting the barn door after the horses had bolted. Over the following months, she gradually re-established a relationship with the kids, which I was also happy to witness. George mentioned that she spent most of her time writing articles for various business blogs and was avoiding dating. She was upset to find out that I was taking the kids on a Mediterranean cruise without her, but managed to cope, wishing us well. The kids frequently texted her photos from our travels. I met a wonderful woman named Nikki from British Columbia, who, like me, was on a post-divorce cruise. She was about a year younger than Linda, had shoulder-length blonde hair, and was quite friendly. I found it charming how she often ended her sentences with, "Eh?" She had 2 children who were around the same age as mine, and they were spending the summer with their grandparents in northern Idaho. We spent a lot of time together talking about our lives and challenges. More than once, Sophie teased me playfully, singing, "Daddy's Got a Girlfriend," and nudging me with her elbow. At the end of the cruise, we exchanged contact details and promised to stay in touch through email and video calls. While I'm not sure where it will lead, we still chat online a couple of times a week. Back at home, we were adjusting to life without Linda around. My boss was very understanding and adjusted my work schedule so I could take the kids to school and pick them up. I knew that in time Aaron would be old enough to drive, and he would take over some of those responsibilities. One day, not long after we returned from our trip, George stopped by with some upsetting news. "They're going to admit Linda to a mental health facility for a while," he said. "Oh, why is that?" I asked. "Sophie sent her a picture of the 3 of you having dinner with that Canadian woman you met on the cruise," he explained. "I don't think she meant any harm, but Linda didn't react well. She lost control. Rhonda and I found her in the bathroom, and she was in a very bad state." "I'm really sorry to hear that," I said, feeling a mix of emotions. While I was genuinely sad to hear about her situation, part of me couldn't help but reflect on how much pain I had felt during her time with Grant. "Yeah, me too. Luckily she's physically fine now, but the doctors say she needs constant care," George added. "Rhonda and I aren't able to provide that, so they're recommending long-term care." "How long will she need to stay there?" I asked. "Hard to say," he replied. "It could be a few years or even permanent." "Please let me know if there's anything we can do," I offered. "Thank you. That means a lot," George said. Nikki and I continued our long-distance relationship, and I found myself becoming closer to her with every conversation. She was also saddened to hear about Linda's situation, especially for George, Rhonda, and the kids, but she understood my feelings. During one of our recent conversations, Nikki mentioned visiting with her children, or possibly inviting us to her home, a 2-story log house on 50 wooded acres near Kamloops, built in the late 1800s. Since I've never traveled north of the U.S. border, it sounded exciting, but for now, I'll leave it at that.